What's up, everybody? It's the Benchwarmers here today, and we're going to be doing a preview of the Eastern Conference Finals between the 3-seed Milwaukee Bucks and the 5-seed Atlanta Hawks. Both teams upset their favorites on their way here. The Hawks defeating the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Milwaukee Bucks defeating the expected champion Brooklyn Nets, who were injured. So with that said, we will be previewing the series. We'll be each talking about one thing which we will find really interesting about the series, and then we'll end with our predictions for the series. So stay tuned for that.
So I'll start off with my take, and I think one important factor is the experience of the players on both teams. So when you compare them, the Hawks are definitely more inexperienced, especially with their key players. This is their first Western Conference final since 2015, and Trae Young, John Collins, and Kevin Huerter all have their very first postseason this year. So I think as those are the three main scoring options and their main players. So I think that's a little bit concerning. But Gallinari, Williams, and Capella are all fairly experienced players who have been in the league for a while, and they've been to several playoffs. But those players are not very key as opposed to Young, Collins, and Herter, and they don't get many minutes. But I think their leadership will still be an important factor. But then when you look at the Bucks, they've been the number 1 seed for 2 years. They played the Heat in the 2020 Eastern Conference semifinals and lost. And they also played the Raptors in the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals, and they also lost that one too. But just going to those important games was, I think, a very important experience for the Bucks and their squad with Giannis and Middleton. I think they've really gotten a lot of experience. And Giannis is a 2-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. Holiday is an 11-year NBA vet. Middleton's been in the league for 8 years. Lopez has been in the league for 12 years, and PJ Tucker is also very experienced. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing for these players to be younger, but I think it's still an important factor because the environment of late playoff games is definitely different than the regular season. So I think this is something to take into account, especially when it's later into the game and it's a close fourth quarter situation.
It's a very interesting take about experience, but I think I'm going to talk about 3-point shooting, which sort of delineates between the older generation, which took very few threes, versus the new generation, takes a lot of threes. And I think there's some sort of symbolism with that, with the Bucks versus the Hawks. The Bucks are much of an old school sort of team. In fact, that as a team, even though they were okay in the regular season, they only made 30% of their threes versus the Nets, which is very bad. It's well below league average. Versus the Hawks, who took more threes and made more threes. They, I think, made around 35 to 36% of threes, which is a really good clip, especially in the playoffs where percentages normally go down. So if the Bucks shoot 30% or better, then I don't think the Hawks stand a chance, because 30% was sufficient to beat a Nets squad, and they shot 30% versus honestly not that great of a defense. And the Hawks are also not that great of a defense, but if they do step it up, they might be able to hold the Bucks to even worse shooting. However, on the flip side, you have the Hawks, who have in several games put up 15 threes in a game. And you have players like Kevin Huerter, Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Danilo Gallinari. So I could see them stealing a game or two in that way. But other than that, I think that they will need a little bit of luck from three in order to win the series.
Yeah, 3-point shooting is definitely going to be a big factor. I'm going to talk about something a bit different, and that's just Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously one of the best players in the league, 2-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. And I really don't know whether the Hawks will be able to contain him at all. Now, Clint Capella is a great defender in the interior, and John Collins is definitely decent as well. But Giannis is just a different breed, and I don't really see any way that even if Clint Capella and Collins play decently, they just don't have the athleticism to be able to keep up with Giannis. However, during the season series, Giannis did average 24 and 11, which is definitely respectable, but it's not his usual self. I think he normally averaged around 28 points during the regular season. But that was during the season, and in the postseason, you see the ball getting put in the hands of stars so much more. And I think Giannis is going to be a very, very high volume shooter during this series, and I could see him scoring like 35 or so points per game. But even if he doesn't, that probably means the Hawks are maybe doubling him, and he's drawing a lot of attention, and that'll open up a lot of opportunities for other Bucks players such as Middleton and Jrue Holiday to get more open looks and generate offensive efficiency that way. So overall, Giannis is just going to be a massive, massive problem for the Hawks, and I'm not sure if their 3-point shooting will be able to counteract that.
So now that we've given our takes, let's move on to the predictions part of this preview, where we'll each give our predictions for what we think will happen in the series. So I personally have the Bucks winning in 6, and I don't have 4 or 5, and that's because I think the Hawks are still a very explosive and unpredictable team. They sort of remind me of the Miami Heat last year, who are also very young, and that Miami Heat team actually did end up beating the Bucks 4-1 and completely shocked everyone. But that being said, I still feel like the Bucks team this year is a lot better than what they were last year. So I think the Hawks will be able to get 2 games, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, I think similarly. I think they'll only be able to get 1 game off. The key difference between the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks, the Miami Heat was a defensive-minded team, and it was also the bubble. And I don't think the Bucks did well in the bubble. That gap really hurt them. You could see that even in the regular season, those last 8 games. But I think that the Bucks are on a roll already, and I think that they will be able to sufficiently put away the Hawks in almost every game. So I think Bucks in 5.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards Aki on this one. Even though the Hawks have done very well to get here, I think a lot of their success has just come from their opponents choking more than just them playing really well. Like if the Sixers or even the Knicks played as well as they should have, I think they could have beaten the Hawks. But I don't think the Bucks are going to choke the same way that the Hawks did. Obviously, they did. They were very clutch in the Nets series, so I don't see any reason why they should be losing many games. So I also have them winning in 5. But that wraps it up for this preview of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Bucks and the Hawks. If you liked it, remember to like. If you didn't, let us know why in the comments below. This is the Benchwarmers signing out. See ya.